morning and happy Tuesday 10 at 10. I am your host, Richard Charpentier, and every Tuesday we receive questions from you, the bakers, answered by bakers. So let's get started with today's questions. So the first question is on keto bread. And for those who are not aware, keto bread is usually made of a combination of a higher protein and lower carbohydrates without any sugar. And there's no true definition about it. But regardless, this is the question. Can xanthan gum and HPMC be added to improve the crumb texture in keto bread? If so, what's a good ratio to use? So it's an excellent question, whether or not xanthan and HPMC or xanthan and HPMC, which it's a cellulose gum, HPMC, which can be used to improve the texture. Remember, when you have really a lot of protein within your bread, it's gonna have to be balanced to ensure that the bread doesn't dry quicker, because that's one of the issue. So I do believe, yes, it would be worth doing R&D work and trying to figure out the right proportion, the right ratio. Unfortunately, I have not yet played in keto with xanthan and HPMC, and it could be other, emulsifiers to help soften the crumb. It could be adding enzymes also to help soften the crumbs and basically prevent stalling over the course of the shelf life of the bread. And all of those things are great things you can use to improve stalling. But I would say do the R&D. There's no, like, hey, put that level and then it's done. So it's going to require a little bit of work on your part to figure out what level. But if you start at a low level, just to ensure, it's not affecting any other attributes of your bread, such as the volume or the crumb texture, etc. So excellent question. Now, moving on to the next question regarding calcium propionate. What's a suggested amount of calcium propionate per pound of flour when making bread? So for, if you want to find any information on calcium propionate or antimicrobial ingredients, I recommend you go to the Bakerpedia homepage and search for calcium propionate or whatever ingredients you're looking for, emulsifiers, surfactants, etc. You'll find, you use the rates, where they come from, and all necessary information that you're looking for. And calcium propionate is the calcium salt of propionic acid. And it is used, as mentioned, as an antimicrobial to prevent, a mold to grow during the shelf life of your bread product. Overall, it is being used a recommended usage level between 0.1 to 0.3% based on the flour percent, but higher level is not uncommon in bakeries. And remember, if once you start playing with the calcium propionate, it's an ingredients in the higher up you go, it can affect the overall flavor. I know it has a distinct smell to me. I'm used to the ingredients, so be careful when going to higher level. It always starts with a clean bakery in order to prevent mold growth on your product. So great question. So moving on to our third question. Someone wants to know about vegan pastry cream, and they said they're making a vegan pastry cream using only milk, almond milk, sugar, corn flour, and flavorings. And I feel donuts with the cream. And what kind of room temperature shelf life am I looking at? It's very, very difficult, because once you to predict what will happen with the shelf life of the cream in a donut, since once you have multi-component baked goods such as your donut filled with cream, It all depends also on the water activity of your cream and the water activity of your donut. As you put them together, they will come to equilibration. So they will equilibrate the water activity versus basically the lower activity versus the higher. So they'll come back to one. So for example, if your cream is a 0.87 and your donut is 0.92, then therefore they'll come to a 0.9. So water will migrate until it equilibrates within your product. So, and that's how your shelf life will be determined. It would not be determined just based on the formula you make, because I don't even know if you're cooking it, how long you're cooking it, how much, moisture and how much water activity, and what is the pH of your cream when you put it in. You can formulate, even as a vegan cream, to have a shelf life of 6 months, if needed, by, as mentioned, controlling the water activity and ensuring you have the right antimicrobial ingredients, such as, a propionic acid or some type of acid to have a good pKa, so in order to control mold growth through the new product. So, but excellent question, and good luck with the continuation and effort on making the cream more stable. And now for the last question, we have a question regarding potassium sorbate, which is also a salt of sorbic, and what will be the shelf life of a sponge cake after adding potassium sorbate. See, it comes back to it. You can put antimicrobial ingredients such as calcium propionate, potassium sorbate into your finished product and ensure you will get a long shelf life. But the shelf life is determined by how you start your ingredient. So, and in your case, your sponge cake, what is the water activity of your sponge cake? What is the pH of your sponge cake? And what is the moisture of your sponge cake? What kind of packaging do you have for your sponge cake? Is this, it doesn't say, it says shelf life, doesn't say whether or not it is frozen, ambient temperature, shelf life. So all of those factors will contribute, but one of the most important thing in a bakery to control is how good of a sanitation program do you have. When the cakes are being moved around, if the handle on this is fully automated, how often do you clean your bakery? Do the employees wear gloves? Do you have any fans in the summer months? Do you have any fans blowing on the products to cool them down? Where are the products cooling? How often do you clean the cooling rack? Because any mold is basically surface mold. Once you bake a cake, the cake is basically, it goes through a kill point. So you get to a point where it's sanitized coming out of the oven. The work to prevent mold to grow is coming from the point your breads or your cakes are coming out of the oven until you package them. So the longer it sits out, the longer your chances, not knowing bakeries, to have mold. So adding potassium sorbate to your cakes is a good thought, but it's not it's not gonna make sure that your shelf life is gonna be amazing. It just controls antimicrobial. It's one tool. So you have to understand also stilling. Would the cake not stale over time, and become crumbly? Who has your packaging, as I've listed all of the different factors also contributing to shelf life. But that's it for today. That was the last question. That was a good question on shelf life and vegan pastry cream. So thank you again for tuning in to Tuesday 10 at 10. Again, welcome from Corsica. You have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you next week. Bye.